Right, so now we're going to talk about avoiding burnout, especially coming out of the pandemic. I think a lot of us are very tired and maybe overworked, and we've been working so hard dealing with all the changes that coming up with something new or regularly doing something that involves a lot of work is exhausting. So we have some tips here to avoid burnout for both new people and people who've been doing this for a very long time. The first thing is don't overdo it. Set limits for yourself and for your staff. I find that this is really helpful with new staff because they come in with lots of energy and they're very excited. And it's like, set a guideline for them so that they're not doing a lot and then assuming that they have to keep up that level. Because when you start to get trained on more things and you take on more responsibilities, you can't do 100% of things that you were doing. So it's nice to set guidelines. And again, you can spread this out across different staff. It should not be one person's job. And then ask yourself or your staff person, does everything need to be a bibliography or display? Like, yeah, it's hot right now, but how long is that going to last? Is it going to be the week? Do we have enough items to put out there? If you have the ability to be flexible with that, when a famous author dies, you put up a display, and when items are gone, take down the display. Not everyone has the ability to do that, and it depends on your staff and your systems and how many people will this benefit. Like, yeah, you are interested or it's in the news, but is there a big enough audience for this to make up for the staff time that you're going to be spending on it when you could be using that space for something else, or you could be using your time for something else? We also, a lot of people feel like they have to provide as many read-alikes as possible because, well, what if they've read these already? Having too many titles makes it incredibly difficult to browse. The more you have, the harder it is to read and the harder it is to pick something. And I just did a craft class and I gave them 5 different colors, and a couple of people were just frozen because they have to pick something. So you don't want to have too much. If someone has read all 15 books, they will come to you and they'll probably say, like, hey, do you have any additional titles for us? Or I loved this list that you set out, but can you recommend something else? And then again, that will make it easier to manage on your website. It will make it easier to manage for the public if you're putting out posters, bookmarks, flyers, anything like that. Give yourself a limit for that. And then you don't need to keep everything forever. Just like we feel like we have to create everything, a lot of places feel like we have to keep everything. And yeah, it might be digital, so it's not taking up physical space on your desk, but it's probably taking up space on your website. The more things you have, the harder it is to find something. So if you have a list of all of your bibliographies, you want to make it easier to find what people are still interested in. So maybe something is out of date. Maybe there's just not as much interest, or you don't have a lot of those titles anymore. You do have to go through your bibliographies periodically and check the titles, maybe update it with a couple of new things, take out anything that's not popular anymore, or maybe got weeded because it wasn't popular. And you can update those, but do everything on a cycle. I used to be in charge of the library's bibliographies. We had about 300 of them, and I had a major spreadsheet because I love spreadsheets. And we would update everything on generally a 2-year cycle. Some things were less because it was, book club picks of 2022. That would be an annual thing. But when it came time to update that, before I would give it to a staff member, I would go in, see how many times we printed bookmarks for this. Do they seem to be moving? How many hits do we get on the website? How many of these links still work to the catalog? and decide, is this one that's worth our time? Or do we take it off the website? You can retire things. Just because you made it doesn't mean it needs to stay forever. And you can still keep it on your intranet or your shared drive so that if you do get a question at some point, staff still have the ability to do that. But you don't need to, keep doing everything, because if you update everything, you're just exponentially increasing your workload every time you make something new. So don't worry about that. It's okay to get rid of old lists. Save lists, posters, bookmarks to reuse in the future, especially holiday things. I would make a holiday cookbooks display, and I had holiday music and books, and I saved those posters and I put up the same poster every year. Because especially if they don't have titles on them, why print it again? Why recreate something every year? And if we had a book list to go with it, I would keep that too, because again, we might not have everything or it might not be on shelf, but it's a really good starting point. You don't need to start from scratch for everything. Just don't reinvent the wheel. It's okay to find things online. You don't need to come with every list completely from your brain. We are librarians. We have resources available. We just talked about a whole bunch of them. When it comes time to look up a list of read-alikes, I start with a Google search usually. It's, what does Novelist say? What does Book Browse say? What does, Book Riot say? What does Twitter think? There's lots of options there. You don't need to create everything from scratch. And especially if you're doing things for social media, go ahead and share that link. You don't need to have everything be the libraries to be able to share it. Okay. And then get the most out of what you're doing. We don't need to do everything separately. If you create one book list of, could be different themes, maybe it's our favorite romance reads, or like I said, the best books of 2022, you can use that in so many different ways. This is not even a complete list, but we've got social media, got a curated list on Overdrive, print and bookmarks, posters, e-newsletters, digital screens, virtual displays, a page on your website of all the bibliographies, a physical display, shelf talkers. You can do so many things with the same list. And maybe you don't do all of them because it's a lot and you don't want to have only one topic presented everywhere, but you don't need to create something brand new every time. So if you're putting in the time to create a bibliography or even just a couple of picks, use it elsewhere. Reviews are the same way. We would have reviews on our blog, and then I would edit them down to a couple sentences and put it on digital screen so that when patrons are walking around, they see the book cover, they see a short blurb. They don't have enough time to stand there and read the whole thing, but they can get a sense for it. And then I could make those into shelf talkers also, especially for something very popular. Maybe, there's something that's really hot and you can't find it on shelf, but where that item would be, you could have a shelf talker for a read-alike. So you can do lots of different things. And especially if you have something like Libraryware or Canva, it makes it really easy to use that same content in different formats so that you're not all doing things separately. It does require you to communicate with each other so that not everyone is making the same list. That was something that when I was managing the bibliographies, I would have people talk to me about their topic before they went and made a whole list, because occasionally we would get two people who would do the same thing. And if they didn't tell me ahead of time, they're both doing unnecessary work and we don't need to do that. So you can have systems in place. You don't even have to be the person to make these, depends on how your library is set up. I currently work in a marketing department. So maybe someone in a different department would create something like this and they could send us the titles and we'll get it into our e-newsletters. We'll get it on our social media. We'll make a poster for you. Whatever you need, we can make happen. Yeah. And then I mentioned this briefly earlier. I like to think of it as whole library advisory. Advisory services go beyond just books. We use readers advisory a lot, but that could be technology, could be services, programs, movies, video games, music, streaming services. Nothing exists in a vacuum. You can promote things that you don't oversee too, things outside of your department. That's why it helps to be aware of what the public is getting and what's going on in other departments. So it shouldn't be one person's job. It should be part of everyone's job. And you can do this through cross-promotion. So you can have materials displayed at a program if it's a similar topic, or if you have a display, you can mention an upcoming program because there's usually a tie between them, and someone who is interested in this kind of book would be interested in this kind of program. Maybe there's another service that they would like. My craft classes are in extremely high demand right now. So we're promoting Creative Bug. We're promoting our craft books because we cannot meet the full demand. We're doing the best we can, but clearly there's a lot of interest. So what are other ways we can meet that? We try to share as much as we can. And you can promote things outside of your departments. Keep in mind, parents are grown-ups too. Like, even if they don't get to spend a lot of time in the adult department because they come in with their kids, you can still talk to them about things other than their kids. So you can have a couple of maybe adult bestsellers on display in the children's area, especially near like a play area where the parents are probably, sitting in their chair and the kids are, playing in some kind of play place. Have those available so that they don't have to go out of their way to get them, especially if your child is really little. It is very hard to go browse something. So keep that in mind. But also, if it's a similar topic, you can promote children's programs at adult programs because they might have children or grandchildren or just know somebody who could benefit from this service. And you never really know exactly what someone wants. So don't look at things as, paint everything with one brush. Think about who is the person in front of me and what are they interested in? What do I think that they would enjoy? The same way you would with books. So it helps to do this. You can get people from all departments doing this, and it takes a little bit of load off of, the one person. So it should be part of everyone's job.